This is OL Nation. Welcome Lawrencians across generations around the globe. At OL Nation, our mission is thought leadership, knowledge sharing, and networking. I'm your program host, Rohan Shetty, Vindhya, 1986. I floated this concept at the onset of the pandemic as we approached Founders 2020 to a very positive response amongst the OL community. As you know, Founders got cancelled that year and last. And so we are delighted to share with you that Founders 2022 will be held on the 5th and 6th of September this year. Several activities have been planned on the 5th of September, which has been designated as Alumni Day. We look forward to seeing you there, and more information will be sent across to you from the OLA shortly. This session, we discuss the film industry from the perspective of three super talented OL Lawrencians who work behind the scenes, behind the silver screen. And now we have your host for the session, Kalpana Kutaya, Pankaj 1980, to lead you in. Welcome, Kalpana.
Thank you, Rohan, and hello, everybody. For this session, we have three very creative individuals. Their lives have revolved around visual storytelling and cinematography, a field that I am really fascinated by. And I'm grateful to them to have come on OL Nation this session and to share their experiences with us. To get us started on this session called Film Behind the Silver Screen, I'm very happy to introduce our three speakers, Vikas Sivaraman, Miriam Joseph, and Karan Bali. Vikas Sivaraman, Vindhya, 1979, better known as Vix, is a graduate of the Film and Television Institute of India. His first feature film, Anmol, was with stalwart director Manmohan Desai, and later he worked with John Matthew on Sarfarosh. As a director of photography, his advertising clients include Coke, Unilever, Canon, and Sony. His films have won numerous awards for photography from the IIA, FAA, and Kodak India. Vix is also a pioneer in underwater cinematography in India. He jointly owns a film equipment company, Camera Crop, which specializes in leasing world-class film equipment to the Indian industry. He is a visiting faculty at the Film and Television Institute of India, the Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, and is an advisor to the government of Lakshadweep on film tourism. Vix enjoys long-distance cycling expeditions and scuba diving with his daughters, Anushka and Avantika. Welcome, Vikas.
Hi, thank you very much, Kuti. Pleasure being here.
Miriam Joseph, Champak, 1985, has over 30 years of experience in the media. She worked as a TV producer in the UK for over a decade and then fulfilled a long-held dream to work in the film industry. She moved to India as an executive producer for Excel Entertainment. She worked on large-scale commercial films like Dawn, Lucky by Chance, Rock On, Game, etc. She now works as a consulting producer and a mentor and as a visiting lecturer at many film schools. Besides being a consultant to the National Film Development Corporation of India, she's instrumental in designing India's first ever film production course. Welcome, Miriam.
Thanks, Kalpana.
Karan Bali, Sumeru, 1986, is also a graduate of the Film and Television Institute of India, the specialization in film direction. He has directed several documentaries and worked together with his Sumeru House classmate, Alex Anthony, on a feature-length documentary, An American in Madras, which has been screened at various international film festivals. They're presently working on another documentary called If I Decree, looking at the confluence between politics and cinema in Tamil Nadu. Karan also teaches filmmaking and runs Upperstall.com, a website on cinema of the subcontinent. He writes extensively on Indian and Pakistani cinema and is a major contributor to the book Bollywood, published by Doreen Kindisi. Welcome, Karan. Thank you all for being on this session. And with these very brief introductions of their stellar careers, I now pass it along to them to continue our conversation.
Thanks, Kalpana. Hi, I'm Miriam Joseph, Champak House, batch of 1985. My father was a teacher at Lovedale for a short while after I was born. And so Lawrence School is the place where I took my very first steps, where I first walked, literally and metaphorically. And one of the things about walking in Lovedale was that you could end up going to have great treats. And I remember walking over from girls' school to Large Hall once a month to watch the films that school would project for us on the big screen. And films were impossibly glamorous to me then. They were a treat, they were special, but they were also shrouded in a mystery. We had no idea how they got made and how they reached us. They just were wonderful experiences. And it's to get past that mystery, it's to demystify that a little bit that I'm joined today by my good friends Vic and Karan. The three of us are filmmakers, and we want to take you all for a little peek behind the silver screens. Hi guys, nice to have you both here.
Hi, Miriam.
Hi, Miriam.
Karan, can I just say I love your shirt. If you could just show everybody who's on there and tell everybody who's on.
Block print of Gurudat and Wahida Rahman from Piazza.
There you go.
Oh.
That's how we're film lovers. We wear our love on our clothes. Let's start at the beginning. Vic, what was your journey like after you left Lovedale?
Left in 79. We were the first batch of first class to the new 10+2 system. So that was a whole different adventure in itself, but arrived to finish my university studies in Bombay. While I was here in college, I took up a summer job in a film production house and came in very close contact with various departments of filmmaking, and my interest kind of veered towards the visual end of it. Got quite interested in what the cinematographers, the magic that they were working. And so made inquiries where one could study it, went to the Film and Television Institute in Pune, 4 years there. Amazing place. Left there with a diploma in cinema with specialization in motion picture photography. That would be cinematography to most people. Came back to Bombay, 2 years honing my craft, trying to figure out how life really works in the world of filmmaking, and slowly started getting to do my own thing, and sort of drifted along with the flow. My wife, I met at Sophie. I met at the workplace as well, and we have two daughters, both of whom are out of the country. One's in UK and one is in Canada, and they're both working there. So yeah, I've been in Bombay for the last 30 years or so, and mostly involved in cinematography and the occasional advertisement film direction. Do photograph advertisements and feature films. So that's pretty much where we are right now.
Nice. And you, Karan, tell us about your journey.
Well, my journey was very clear that I had to get into the world of films. I had already decided that while at school. There was no engineering, being a doctor, anything for me. In fact, and I also wanted to go to film school. I'd heard so much about FTII. And I just thought that was the best way to go about it. In fact, I wrote to the FTII when I was in the 12th, and they actually replied back in one of those cyclo-styled typed sheets where they actually told me that I had to be a graduate and I could thereafter, I would be eligible, to apply for the entrance exam. So my degree was just there for me to get that piece of paper that I'm eligible, to be able to try for the FTII. So I did my graduation in St. Xavier's, Mumbai, and did the entrance exam. And I was fortunate I actually got through on my first attempt. In fact, when I got through the entrance exam, I happened to meet Vikas. And I happened to tell him, so what do I do? I've actually got the call for the orientation and the final interview. And he actually told me, don't stress. You play it by ear. You're from Lovedale. You'll know what you have to do and you'll get in. Now to me, now when I think back on it, this advice I think says a lot, and it also doesn't say I think anything out there. But I would actually say it actually says a lot. Those words that you are from Lovedale and you will know what to do, I think was really the key. I got in. I was fortunate. I think a whole new world opened for me over there. I also think I grew as a person there. It shaped my worldview as an artist, as a person. And as I said, we saw cinema from all over the world. Thereafter, I joined Siddharth Kak, who was producing the Indian cultural magazine program Surabhi. I had worked briefly for them as an assistant director earlier, but now I joined as an independent director for their segments. And one thing led to another, and that kind of got me on the documentary field. So most of my work as a professional in filmmaking has been documentary filmmaking. That said, I have tried to widen at least my horizons within the film world. I have worked on 2 feature films, which we are going to come to later. Everybody Says I'm Fine and Matrabhumi. And I've been working on writing on cinema. I've been teaching cinema. I've been on juries of various festivals. Generally, and to be in the line. So Miriam, Vic and me, of course, have the common factor of FTII going to a film school in India. You actually went abroad to study film, didn't you?
I did. Lovedale wouldn't have me back for +2 because they thought I was a troublemaker. And that turned out to be lucky for me, because it was while I was doing my +2 that my dad's brother came to India with the technology and the equipment to make India's first 3D film. And I got to hang out briefly on the sets. And I don't know if I was hooked, but I was very, very clear then that I wasn't going to do anything else. And so quite like you, I got myself a degree and went to England to study film, and kind of loved it, really. Was really happy I made that choice. Was very lucky my parents kind of put any hurdles in my way. They were a little worried that it wasn't an occupation they understood. They didn't know how secure it would be, but they were like, well, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. I did. I studied film at a place called Goldsmiths at London University, lovely fine arts college, and have been in the media for 32 years since then. And just really quite grateful. I knew I didn't want a job that required conformity or sort of wearing the proverbial tie to work. And I think this occupation has suited me down to a T. It's been wonderful. And the thing I like most about this business of ours is that it takes so many different kinds of people and so many different kinds of skills to make movies. I mean, the 3 of us have joined the same profession, but we cut it from 3 different areas, right? Vic, technical person, wizard. Karan, you're an author. You've gone down the authorial path of this business. And I'd probably say I've gone down the kind of operational path. Tell me, what drove your choice, Vic? Why cinematography? Why photography? Why the visual image?
Well, unlike you guys, I had no idea that I was ever going to end up behind a camera, to be perfectly honest. On the contrary, I think when I was in college, I was very keen on travel, and not having the means to be able to do that, I figured the only way I could get to travel around a bit was to join the Merchant Navy. So I was going to be sailing the 7 seas. Having a look at the world and so on and so forth. Eventually, though, I did a summer job, like I mentioned earlier, and it was during this summer job with a film production house that I discovered cinematography. It was quite, I mean, I found my life interest quite clearly at that point. And then from there on, it's just been a relentless pursuit. Now, I think what did kind of help me along, though, was a certain technical bent of mind. I mean, it was physics that I studied in college, and that really did help. The Film and Television Institute was an endless resource of every kind, I mean, not just in molding the kind of people that we would be by the time we left, but also the resources of the National Film Archive, for instance, which was absolutely stupendous collection of world cinema. And we had access to it, and for the staff were like unbelievable. The facilities there to learn filmmaking are amongst the best anywhere you'd find in the world. And it all, kind of came together really well for us students out there. And the 4 years that we all spent out there were really transformative. And, it really spat out potentially great technicians and filmmakers and auteurs and what have you. I think my only indication that I might somehow have ended up doing what I do now was a Click 3 camera, which I was presented for my 15th birthday by my dad. And later on, the good offices of Mr. Balraman, who ran the photography department at school.
Yeah.
And all those nights spent in the dark room out there doing all sorts of printing and God knows what else. But yeah, I mean, somewhere along the way, those came in handy. So I think to sort of put it all together, it was a bit of technical, bit of adventure. You have to have a slightly adventurous spirit. You have to. I mean, otherwise, cinematography is not something you really want to get into. There's lots of other stuff that
it's
comes.
Hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard work. It's you've got to enjoy doing what you're doing. Otherwise, it's going to take its toll physically, emotionally, and everything. So it's pretty hard work. So when all these things fall in place, I guess it's probably the best thing I could ever be doing. I mean, I can't see myself.
And Karan, you always wanted to be the storyteller. Apart from just wanting to go to film school, you were also very clear that you wanted to be the person telling the story, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, there are, I think, 2 stages to this. I became a film buff at a rather young age. Both my parents were, very fond of watching movies. My dad watched more of Hollywood. My mom watched more of Hindi. And in fact, I remember when she was a student at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, she would bunk and go to RK Studios to see Raj Kapoor shoot. And watchman wouldn't let the boys in, but the girls had to smile sweetly at him, and they were allowed to go in and see the shooting. So in fact, she's seen a couple of iconic songs like Wo Subha Kabhi To Aayegi actually shot in front of her in the RK Studios.
Wow.
The other part of it was that being a part of school plays right from the 4th, I somewhere kind of saw that as, because I was in school plays regularly. In fact, in the junior school, the one that you were in, I was the prompter in the 7th, and in the 8th, I acted in the junior school play. So,
yeah, I remember.
But I somewhere saw that the faculty or the directors were calling the creative shots, and that interested me somewhere. And my mind went more in that direction, that I'm finding this interesting that they are dealing with elements of the story and how to tell the story. And that, I think, led me towards actually that if I were to get into the film line, I want to tell the stories. I want to direct. And Vikas has pretty much, I think, spoken about what FTII did for us. I think it was a common experience. It really opened up a whole new world, the kind of cinema we saw from all over the world. Till then, I'd seen mainly Hollywood and India. I mean, you learned there is a different way to tell stories.
Yeah.
And sound, can be used in so many different ways and so effectively to create cinema. And I think we were also at that impressionable age that when you learn about cinema, you learn about it as an art form. you also think somewhere begin to get into the role of an artist.
Yes.
So I think it played a very strong role in shaping us as people, and I think shaping us with our worldview. That was, I think, very, very important. And of course, the joy to see one classic film after another every day over there, it's just undescribable. I think that was our biggest learning experience. Of course, we had faculty, but it really came from watching movies, discussing them with your peers, and then the infrastructure there that helped you with your exercises. That I think is very important in film school, that you get the opportunity for your practicals to see if you're able to translate your ideas on screen. Now, if I had to industry, I would have had to assist somebody. I would have learned whatever maybe he was doing on the job. But this gave me an opportunity to see what are my strengths and weaknesses, and I think to develop my own identity. That I think is very important. And as we've gotten to our careers, I think, as you mentioned, I can't think of having done anything else in my life. We truly love, I think, that what we want to do. I think we're very fortunate to be able to do that. And like you mentioned, I love it that we don't have to dress up at all. I love it that we don't have office hours. I don't mind working long hours.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of our line, that it could be 18 to 20 hours when you have to work. You have time to chill when you want to. And generally, a lot of your life is I think, in your hands, which I wouldn't have it any other way. But
Absolutely.
I do think something over here, because when Vic and me came into the line, as it is, our parents were not, I don't know about his, but my parents were a little apprehensive, my mother, because not too many people enter this line. And my mother was a little apprehensive. I think my dad was relieved that he's found what he wants to do. But when we joined it, we were still many more men in the line. You've been in it for such a long time, and today we see a lot of women technicians. I'd like to actually hear more from your side about entering it, being a woman at that time, and generally seeing that change. Or because, I mean, over what, it's been 3 decades?
Yeah, I feel old now. I went to film school in London, and so there were a few more women there. I mean, I had other female classmates then, but none of them chose producing. And for me, I don't want to say I chose producing. I kind of feel like producing chose me. I just got to film school and found that I wanted to know a bit about everything, about cinematography, about sound, about design, about budgets, about schedules. I was curious about everything. And it kind of, producing seemed like the right fit. And so I always say producing chose me, because it allowed me to kind of have a finger in every pie, while still keeping my eye on the main prize of the whole film. When I first started, even though I started in television, my first sort of 10 years of work was in television, there were very, very few women producers. I'd say about 90% of the producers I worked with were all men. So it wasn't, it's difficult to say whether it was hard or not looking back on it now. It just was what it was, and I did what I did. I worked really hard. I think, like both of you said, I loved what I did. It gave me a buzz to wake up every morning and know that this was what I got to do for a living. And so I got good at it. I think if you like what you do and you practice it and you work hard, you get good at what you do. I think as I grew older, I began to realize that as a woman, if I wanted to move further and I wanted to become a leader and an actual producer, I would have to be twice as good as the men around me. And I was, I had to be, and so I did. But like the both of you said, I think that boils down to the fact that I loved what I did. And I loved the opportunities it gave me. Like Vikas said, to see the world, to meet people that I would never have met otherwise, to delve into stories and things that you know are so far away from your normal life. So I loved it. I loved it. I love what I do. And I would encourage women to become producers, because I think we're geared to be good producers. We're multitaskers. We're great communicators. So yeah, that answers your question about me being a woman in the business.
You work in both England and in India. What I want to ask you is, again, in terms of being a woman, did you actually face a bit of bias in either of the industries that you worked at that you had to overcome?
I think in England, it was less overt. Let me put it that way. They didn't dismiss you directly to your face, but they found other ways to do it. In India, and I came to India, you know, in my mid-30s, already a producer. Here it was a lot more blatant. Here it was like, what do you know? We don't want to talk to you, we'll talk to the boss. The boss meaning the financier of the film. I'm like, yeah, but he doesn't have to do the job I have to do. I still have to do the job. So yeah, my first 2 or 3 years in Hindi cinema was spent first being shocked, really, because, you know, the concept of a professional producer didn't seem to exist in India. There weren't any systems. It wasn't very organized. It seemed really weird. I thought I might go back to England. And then I was very lucky. I met Excel Entertainment, who were the guys at that point who had made Dil Chahta Hai. And they seemed like a company that wanted to do, you know, quality work. So we were kind of a good fit. And I spent the next decade working with them, making movies. I think, like Kalpana said, you know, both The Dons with Shah Rukh, Luck by Chance, Game, Rock On, lots of good films. But mostly, I think what I enjoyed about that was just the sheer scale at which I got to work, you know. While I worked at the BBC, it was still television and it was small. You know, Vic knows, in fact, both of you know, a feature film is just large. It's, you know, a huge village of people getting together. And being part of the kind of conductor, or being the conductor of that orchestra, is kind of how I consider myself. One of the conductors of that orchestra was just, it's super challenging, super stressful, but also ultimately so rewarding. I love that. I still have to pinch myself sometimes at you know, the size of budgets I got to work with and all of that kind of stuff. I enjoyed a lot. I've now taken a step back from the day-to-day, but I know the both of you are still very much in the heart of the business. I mean, and Vic, you do a technical job that for a long time remained the same when you worked in celluloid, but now in the last sort of 20 years has just, you know, taken off in terms of how much it's changed, how much you have to kind of be on your toes all the time, don't you, with this whole digital revolution? Tell us about a bit of that.
Every day is a new day, literally. You know? It's quite amazing how quickly systems and practices update themselves these days.
Yeah.
Gone are the days of comfort when you acquainted yourself with one set of practices and one set of equipment, and that kept you company for at least a few years. But here you wake up every second day and someone, you know, they're thrusting something new into your face, and, you know, you have to scramble to find out something about what's being, you know, used today and so on and so forth. But having said all of that, the most rewarding thing has been, honestly, if I had to put it in one little phrase, it is creating something out of nothing. I think that is true for anybody who is involved in any kind of creative pursuit. So, you know, whether it's a writer with a blank piece of paper, whether it's a, you know, painter with a blank canvas, and in our case, you know, you come onto a location or a set, and you have to start figuring out what, you know, when put it all together. And the most rewarding thing, of course, is that you eventually spit out something which is of some merit, I suppose, creatively and technically and so on. So every day being a different place, every day being a different office, so to speak, a new set of people, I'm really as good as everybody that I collaborate with. It is a team effort. It's a huge team effort, like you had, said some time back. It's people bringing in their little bits, and sometimes you do have to step in and take the lead and push things along. Sometimes there will be lots of help from places that you never thought the help would come from. And eventually all of it falls in place. There are so many people doing so many little things. Everybody puts it all together, and I am very honestly surprised a lot of the time when we actually spit a film out at the other end. Through all that chaos, management. It's quite an event, and it's a fantastic, almost a circus. Things are happening all around, and everybody is doing their acrobatic bit. But eventually, we do turn out something which is quite remarkable, I think. Yeah, so I wouldn't really care to be anywhere else. It's been most rewarding, and very happy to be where I am, and hopefully will remain here for a bit.
Absolutely.
I think, Karan's also had some seriously good adventures along the way.
But Karan, you
worked in advertising, you worked in big units. Apart from the films, I was the first AD on. My documentary units are very intimate.
But Karan, more than before your documentary, before you tell us about that, I wanna say something that always makes me very proud, to know you, and that you're a fellow Lawrencian. I consider like the principal custodian of Indian film legacy in this country. I don't really know anyone else that knows as much about Indian cinema, and I don't mean just Hindi cinema, I mean Indian cinema, and loves it as much as you do. You set up Upperstall, which Kalpana talked about, which is this fabulous website that anyone who actually wants anything remotely intelligent about Indian cinema uses regularly. Time magazine once called it, I think, one of the 3 best film websites in the world. This is your baby, Tell us a little bit about that baby, because you really do kind of, like I said, you're a custodian of this legacy that's precious. Tell us about that, and then tell us about your documentaries too, and your love of Tamil cinema.
I'm embarrassed with that kind of statement. I think it actually...
No, don't be.
I think it comes out of the fact that, to put it very simply, I'm a retro person. I kind of have a leaning towards the past in most art forms, be it music, be it theater, be it movies. In fact, I did not grow up on the movies of the 1970s. Through my dad, I saw the classic Hollywood films. I was a big Hitchcock fan. And in Indian cinema, Hindi cinema, I was more in the era of Guru Dutt and Bimal Roy of the 50s, rather than Sholay in the 1970s, where I actually, I think, grew up. So I think I have this one affinity to go and explore history. But again, history in the art form, not history as a subject in school, mind you.
No.
Over there, but more like and I think it's somewhere I've always felt that when I've gotten to an art form, I wanted to know more about its history. It's not merely learning film appreciation or cinema history. It's something on the side I wanted to go deeper into. And Upperstall really got born when we did not have enough resources at that point of time. If I were to search for stuff on Indian cinema. So one decided, okay, why not do it ourselves? Me and a few other people. And we started it in 2000. We turned 22 earlier this month. And I think part of it has been because we never saw it as a business or a web startup or requiring something. We do it along with our work, and perhaps the pressure is off, and that's what kind of keeps us, running. Now, a couple of things that I think Vikas had mentioned, which I think it also helped me with An American in Madras. Digital, of course, means something very different for him. There's a new camera every day. There's new workflows, and how to get that image from there into the edit, into the VFX, into the final picture. I think it helped a lot of indie filmmakers to actually make that film. That is one very interesting part that I find that digital has done, that somewhere equipment has become more affordable. The software for editing, the software for sound work is more affordable. You can do it on your computer. And okay, honestly, when something is so accessible, I do have to say that a lot of the work that has come out is also not the best, but you would never have a Village Rockstars that Rima Das made if it wasn't for the digital equipment, etc., being so accessible. So that, I think, it has underlined the fact that go ahead, make your film and tell your story. Yeah. That, I think, from a directorial point of view, I find very, very important and interesting about I think cinema going digital. Of course, we all know, because we came from an era when there was celluloid. My FTII exercises all were on film. We can wistfully look or think back in terms of, shooting, standing next to the camera because to see what's happening in front of you, waiting, biting your nails till your rushes come the next day. What the hell have we actually shot? Because we are actually from an era in FTII when we didn't even have video assist. So we literally had to see our rushes the next day. So that, I think, a digital thing somewhere, yes, on a more romantic level, we might say there was the magic of celluloid, but at least I think it's made filmmaking accessible to a lot of people. I think that's very, very important. And this, just going back that when we spoke about FTII, the fact that we were part of an institute that treated cinema as an art form, and it had a fee structure that was so heavily subsidized that anybody from any part of India could study film. Absolutely. So I think it's great to see an extension of that as to what even I think digital is doing. Now, since I was working in documentaries, I began to get more and more documentaries. You tend to get, I think, typecast at times in this line. And even now, even on documentaries, when I teach, I'm more typecast for film appreciation, for Indian cinema history. I clamor to do filmmaking workshops, directorial workshops with students. So at every place I go, I say, okay, that's okay, but I want to do this over there. But somewhere out of Upperstall, also an American in Madras, which perhaps is my most well-known, documentary, and which, as Kalpana mentioned, my batchmate, Alex Anthony or Bonnie from Sumeru actually came forward to produce.
He's your producer, right? Yeah.
He's not only classmate, he's housemate. Except that he left at the 10th. But yeah, we were in Sumeru house, till the 10th. So somewhere an American in Madras actually deals with an American character who came to India in the 1930s and made Tamil films. Yeah. And he gave MGR his first break. He directed M.S. Subbulakshmi in her most famous movies. Yeah. So that came out actually, initially I wasn't even intending to do it as a movie. It was an article for Upperstall. But it kind of fascinated me. What was an American doing here? How did he kind of manage with the language, etc.? So one thing led to another. And I was very fortunate that being an American, he archived his life. The one thing in India that we are rather short of is archiving. We've lost so much of our cinematic heritage because we don't believe in the concept of archiving. And this man had archived his life. He had archived himself on the sets of his first 3 movies. I had a wonderful archival material to play with. And that's when I saw there was a definite film of it. And that, I think, kind of thing led me to an American in Madras.
When the hero and the heroine come together, a certain intimacy has to develop. And generally speaking, if you see other Tamil films or Indian films at that time, it's extremely awkward and very restrained, because it was considered, in quotes, vulgar. But somehow Duncan manages to make it natural.
ரொம்ப நல்ல heavy love scenes. நீங்க பாத்திருக்கீங்களா?
The women in Duncan's films were always a little bold. They were proactive. They kind of seized the control of their own fates, as opposed to conventional Tamil film heroines who generally allow other people to decide their fates.
தொட்ட போதெல்லாம் சுவையூறு நல்கிறது விட்டிருக்க முடியாது என்னால். அத்தா, சரி, நேரமாகி விரைவில் சந்திப்போம்.
To say that Bonnie as a producer was a rather pleasant surprise. He runs his own ad agency and very, very well in Bangalore. And he has this knack of when he hires someone, he knows what they are acting specialists in. He does not interfere in their work. I have never had that kind of creative freedom as this movie. He only saw the film when we had the first screening. He hadn't even seen a single shot of the rushes.
That's a great producer though.
Oh, absolutely. He was, as long as you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
The film also opened up a few other doors for me because apart from regular places for documentary screenings, I became a part of the festival circuit. So this movie traveled extensively. Being an American, I got to go to America and do a university tour, which was very, very interesting to travel right around the country. We were also fortunate that Netflix and other OTT platforms had just come into India, and they were looking at that point of not their original content, but any content to build up their libraries. So we actually recovered our money, and for an independent documentary, it's a big thing, through Netflix and the screening on Channel 4 UK. So at that point of time, it was a new outlet, the OTT platforms. And again, I think it's made it interesting for filmmakers today that there are more and more platforms for them to showcase their work. If at all I have a complaint, even with the OTT platforms today, one, in Netflix particularly, I'm not overly fond of the Indian content. And two, I don't think they've gone enough to newcomers. They've gone to the same old production houses. I don't know how that is going to change.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Now, we've all waxed lyrical about this profession of ours and why we love it and all of that. I want all of us to kind of remember any downsides or any not so brilliant stories about the work we do and where we're at. Vic, you're, age before beauty. You've done this a lot longer than all of us. Any kind of not so glamorous stories?
Well, it's a mixed bag. We've had great times and there have been not so great times. It's very hard to recount all the not so great times. I think I'm usually hard pressed to do that. But I think the one or two occasions that I wish I was doing something else was possibly, one occasion was definitely when we've been 72 hours non-stop on the job. And this was a long time back I think I was probably in my 30s, but today I'd probably shoot it down immediately. But even the thought came up. But at that time, we said, yeah, okay, fine, let's pull it off and all that. And finally, I had to be woken up on the camera because I'd fallen asleep on it.
Oh, shoot.
So that was, but the thing is that we do work these strange hours. It is hard work.
Yeah.
I do know that for a long time, the housing society that I lived in thought I was a smuggler because of all the odd hours that we used to keep. And, in those days, smuggling was a big thing. So they were convinced that I was into some smuggling activity, some nefarious activity. And eventually I had to kind of get, when I got friendly with them and they got to know me, they all heaved a big sigh of relief. So the not so good experiences are few and far between, to be perfectly honest. The good experiences are a dime a dozen. I mean, every day is a new day, and I do enjoy going out and meeting all the new people and putting it all together and putting our heads together, making something work. I also think being sort of complimented, awarded, and acknowledged for things that you do. Again, that happens on a fairly frequent basis when you've done something good for somebody who's happy with what you've done, and they send a message and follow you up. That's really rewarding as far as I'm concerned. Of course, awards are, and there have been some coming along the way, and they're always welcome.
You're being modest now.
Very.
Yeah, well, it's been a fairly interesting journey. I can't say, but I do remember one occasion which was quite hair-raising, and that is we were doing a film for ICI group of companies, and we had to film the making of dynamite. Now, the dynamite is actually mixed in a mixing room which is sunk into the side of a hill, because in case that thing explodes, at least it'll vent itself upwards and not sideways, right?
Yeah.
And inside the room is this huge vat, mixing vat, and the nitroglycerine manufacturing unit is on top of the hill, because you cannot pressurize nitroglycerine. It has to be brought into the mixing room purely by the strength of gravity. So that was hairy. Well, yes, I was in there trying to film all of that, knowing that this damn thing can go off at any time, and they won't even find one little piece of you if it does go off. And we were allowed in there one at a time. They were very clear only one person goes in, because we don't know when it's going to blow up. So that was good. Yeah.
That is
hairy. So
hairy.
some experience. I love underwater. I've been filming a lot. I not so much of late, but I probably started filming underwater amongst the first people in India to do underwater cinematography. Again, just out of a sense of adventure, I guess, more than anything else. Yeah, I wanted to do it, and they could do it. Why can't we do it? And we actually made our own equipment and manufactured our own stuff out here and so on. I made it all possible. So that was fun. So you get some nice times also.
And Karan, you?
Well, I think in my line, having done more of documentaries, there's a saying that in fiction, the director is God. In documentaries, God is the director. So I think some of the most beautiful moments, to be honest, have actually come often by accident.
Yeah.
It's just that you see something on the spur of the moment, and it just works. We were shooting for an American in Madras, the same location where LSR Duncan, the American, had shot his last film. And that sequence included this, the villain has called his wife there to push her off the hill, but instead she turns the table on him in Yerkard and she pushes him down the hill. So in the film I've actually intercut that sequence with the actual location. Okay, so we were shooting The Rock over there, and suddenly one fruit seller out there, a woman in her 60s or thing, she happened to mention that she was a young girl and she saw how they took a doll and they pushed the doll down.
Oh, wow.
I told my DOP, Ramani, to finish that shot, fix the frame over here. And immediately, and it was a wonderful interview because it's just coming from someone out of the blue.
Random, yeah.
Saw the shoot. So many a time, I think in these small documentaries, it's the more accidental moments that actually lead to the magic. In fact, even in the one I'm doing now, the one on politics and cinema in Tamil Nadu, in Tamil it's called Nan Anayatal, which means if I decree. It's the title of an MGR, very famous song of MGR.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful shots, I think, actually got taken when we stopped for a break to change the camera because we had some travel shots on the Osmo. So basically to take shots on the Osmo, and we saw this shot of this auto guy, dead tired after the end of a day's sleep, sleeping in the auto with MGR painted inside his auto. It is such a beautiful shot. I mean, and again, it just comes purely by accident. Disappointments, yes, documentaries often take you to very, very small interior locations. Again, but that's also one of the beauty of our line, that we would travel to places, and like you said, meet people we would never do otherwise. I would never have gone so much into remote India, into the remote corners of India, if it wasn't for this line. But there are, at times, now those people obviously don't understand the importance if you're dependent on them for production. I need a sunrise shot. They come half an hour late, and so we came half an hour late. What's the big deal? So you also kind of learn that at times, okay, you're not exactly going to get. Then you also kind of have to manage with what you get over there. But then that's, I think, a part and parcel. I think we've all had great moments in our movies. Of course, I do say a lot of it is by accident, but that doesn't also mean that you don't plan for a lot of things. Shooting requires a lot of planning, be it documentary, be it I think fiction.
Yeah.
There are some things that you obviously work for, and when they work, you know that you've kind of thought about it, you've gone about it in a particular manner, and it's bound to work. But yes,
Absolutely.
I think the additional factor of God being your director does give you some really magical moments.
I mean, one of my hairiest moments in my sort of feature film career was we were in Malaysia. We were there for about 3 months shooting for the first Dawn. And we were all staying in one hotel, which was a pretty fancy hotel because the whole crew was there. They'd given us a good deal. And for a week during our 3 months there, at one point, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the CHOG-M annual meeting, was happening in Kuala Lumpur. And just our luck that a few of those heads of government happened to be staying in the hotel that we were staying. Anyway, we think nothing of it, but there's big Malaysian security, there's X-ray machines, there's everything. So anyone going in and out of the hotels checked, all of that. We're just doing our thing, and at the end of one day, shooting day, the crew was coming back and, as usual, putting their bags through the machine, sending it through. And my art director, Abid, he wasn't thinking. He just put his bags through with all his stuff. And inside his bag, he happened to have a prop we were using that day, which was a bomb. It was a prop bomb, with wires and what looked like Semtex and all of that. Oh my God. Oh my God. I wasn't there. I suddenly get a call from the reception saying, get yourselves down here. Got down, and then I spent the next almost 16 hours in a weird-ass room with Abid, 2 of his art department assistants, being questioned by Malaysian intelligence. I mean, honestly, I thought we were either going to get thrown in jail, beheaded. I wasn't sure what was going to happen to us. I just remember being very, very scared and not laughing because, there's one part of my brain that says, it's a prop. I mean, it's made out of plywood and bits of wire. It's a prop. But of course, for them, it wasn't a joke because the government's staying in that place. So we've had a few of those, but I honestly don't remember ever being as scared as I was that day and thinking, why did I choose this job? Why couldn't I have just been an insurance saleswoman and just, had an easy life? But yeah, life is, it's never the same, is it, in our business? It's always, always fun like that. But this, the 3 of us, we know each other from Lovedale. What did Lovedale give you guys that you've used in your careers that you think has stood you in good stead? What was Lovedale good for in terms of becoming filmmakers? Karan?
See, I think I wouldn't say it had a direct impact in terms of it because obviously it was a career I chose later, and I think my grounding really came from FTII as a filmmaker. But I think there are certain qualities. I think perhaps the fact that we were in a boarding school from such a young age, I think that school made me independent. It made me confident in certain situations. And I think you can make the most of of a worse situation because you've lived in a hostel. You're used to conditions which may not be the best over there. So that I would definitely, say the confidence level and independence that I think I got from school. Yes, a certain level of perseverance in my work. Maybe I'm taking the never given part a little too seriously. But yes, I think it did that to me. And as I mentioned, indirectly, the school plays did lead me on to my career. But I think now when I think back on school, because again, there are some heavy pros. There are certain friends you've made for life, obviously that we've, kind of lived together. But I also feel that at times when I look back, I do realize that in a public school like that, I think we came from a rather privileged background, and a lot of us kind of belong to that background. So a certain grounding, I think I would say in my life, I got not from school, but from my college friends. So of course, as I said, school taught me a lot, but I think I perhaps got that grounding in life. And then of course, FTII opened the door towards my career. But the fact that I've made certain friends for life, as I said, the fact that there was a certain level of confidence in me, there was a fact that I could be independent in any situation, because I mean, we used to go for outings to Ooty in the bus right from junior school. So I think that obviously school has given me over there.
And you, Vic?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would agree 100% with Karan. I think the sense of independence is, that it sort of instills in you is quite, useful. It really sets you up very well for what you have to do in creative pursuits. Also, I thought that the fact that we grew up so close to nature, I think that made a big difference for me, at least. All those wonderful treks that we used to go on and, spend most of our time at Smith's Cave or whatever it was, doing all those intimate things in nature, with nature, is something that I think helped me a lot over the years. I also think the teamwork. I feel that the ability to get along with a wider, diaspora of people somehow gets instilled in you from that point itself, and it makes it so much easier later on in life for you to mingle with and to work with and team up with and collaborate with. The other small thing which I think did help me was, in some way, I mean, the introduction to creative pursuits of various kinds.
Absolutely.
Whether it was being a part of the school band, or whether it was being, in the art rooms or in the carpentry class, it all kind of, I think, sparked off some creative. I mean, I knew, even to date, I can walk into a set, and if there is something going wrong with the carpentry department, I can tell them, listen, guys, try it this way. Quite literally. Yeah, and so that sort of a thing also has been a great help over the years. So these are, I think, some of the sense of adventure that you kind of, get hold of while you're there. All these things kind of come handy, I guess.
I guess for me, you guys have covered most of the things. The only thing I would add that Lovedale gave me was the capacity to be adaptable to any situation, any people, any place. And I think that's a super quality for the kind of job I do. So I want to tell people how the three of us know each other outside of school. At the turn of the century, I came to India to help a friend on a film he was making. And imagine my surprise and joy, really, to find that two Lawrencians were on it, the cinematographer and the first AD, Karan and Vic. This film was the first fiction feature film I'd ever worked on. This film was the first fiction feature film that Karan was an assistant director on. And this film was the first Think Sound feature film that Vic did. So it was a very important film for all three of us. What do you guys remember about that film? I remember lots of things. Karan?
Okay, one, it was for the first time as against intimate units in a feature film. I was in the middle of a huge unit. I realized that the first AD gets bambooed between the production and the direction. On one level, he has to run the shoot, and each department thinks he's their man to keep control on the shoot. The director feels I'm his man to see that the creativity goes on uninterrupted. The production feels, he's our man to make sure everything goes smoothly out there. But in fact, I actually remember that I think it's the nature of the job that you and me we've stayed friends. Between production and direction, the amount we fought.
Yes.
That's the memory I have. They will, direction will always feel that production hasn't given them even the basics. And production will always feel, do they know the budget that they ask for the moon each time? Out there. I do remember we did break our heads a lot with each other, but I think we also knew we were doing it for the film, or else we would not be best friends as we are today. Apart from that, the experience of running that shoot, of course, was very, very memorable, but I think it was also seeing Vic at work. I'd heard so much about him. We knew what he was doing in ads, and for the first time, I was actually working with him on the sets. And that, I think, was the biggest joy, because somewhere in Everybody Says I'm Fine, I had a little bit of an additional duty. Rahul Bose is very clear as to what he wanted from his actors, but the technical input of going from shot to shot did also fall on my shoulders, and consequently on Vic's shoulders. So a lot of the shot breakdown discussion was done between Vic, the editor Suresh Pai, and me. So, and in that, I think it was a very, very strong learning experience from me, just looking at Vic work. That, I think, was something that I really got a lot out of in that film. In fact, there were days that, when we had a abnormal number of shots, there were key sequences that the entire set was full of characters. And I just saw how instinctively he changed his speed. He knew exactly what had to be done. And we actually finished those scenes with a little bit of time to spare. And I kind of saw how he adapted day by day, looking at how much had to be shot. And that judgment that he had already, how much of time do you take for each shot, which is the shot that requires that much more care. I mean, it was really
watching a master in action, isn't it?
Absolutely, to see him at work.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm a bit overwhelmed out here because I don't remember sort of engineering anything of the sort. Well, every shoot is unique. And I think this one was particularly unique for me for many reasons. Primary being that I had two fellow Lawrencians working on the film, and in two very, very key positions. One who was going to engineer the whole show on the floor, and the other who was going to be engineering the whole show from outside the floor. And it was two very, very important positions being anchored by two fellow Lawrencians, and somehow I knew it would all go well. That's from that point itself. So also, I'm sure you guys remember that, well, it was actually the first sound shoot that I did, and we had this magician on the sound department called Rasool Pukuti, who made our lives miserable, but understandably so in retrospect. Went on to win himself an Oscar for another film, the Slumdog Millionaire that he did, and he really did such a great job. But yes, it was a whole new experience for me to be working with a fairly, anal sound engineer. So
it was also the first time I'd ever been introduced to something called glass wool, which is the material he was using to insulate the set from extraneous sounds. But, I guess that's what it takes to win yourself an Oscar, is to be demanding and want to do your very best. Yeah. It was fantastic.
He almost killed us with glass wool, if you remember.
Yes, he did.
We had glass wool floating on the whole set for some 10 days into the shoot.
It was quite a crazy shoot. I mean, to create a street inside the studio and have the cars driving in and out of
it was incredible.
Studios, it was crazy in its own way.
Yeah, it was fun.
So on that fabulous note, and really good memories with both of you. Thanks a lot, man, for doing this. It's been so much fun sort of going down memory lane with you guys. Kalpana, back to you.
Thank you very much, Miriam, Vikas, and Karan. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to your conversations, full of adventure, full of fun, full of happy memories, and lots of good content as well. I probably have a question for each of you. I have many, but I'm just keeping in mind the time we have for it. Curious about lots of things, but let me start with Vikas. Vikas, one thing that has always concerned, been a curious thought in my mind about when you make a film, there are three people there are many people involved, but at one moment in time, there's the director, the character that's playing the role of the person they expected by the director, and there's a photographer who actually has to capture what the storyline is and what the director is trying to make them do. How do those three things work at that one moment in time, once you say action to cut? There is a visual story that the director of photography has to kind of manage and tell us, narrate to us what the written is. And what process do you all have for that conversation or that collaboration between the director and the photographer and the actor, for that matter, a character?
We could talk about this for hours, actually.
I know.
But very broadly, I think we normally come onto the set well prepared. Discussions of how, why, and wherewithal of what we're going to do on the set are all put in place well before we get to actual filming. Sometimes actors are also part of it. A lot of the times, the actor and director have their own, equation and their own means of communicating what they want from each other. And I kind of get looped in probably either very early on or sometimes on the set. It depends on the kind of people who I am associated with. If they're very stringent actors who want everything down to the T, then of course we huddle much before. But there are actors who are happy to improvise as they go along and, just need the bare minimum of what they need to do or the instruction and so on and so forth. So it's all a pretty mixed bag. And it depends on the three people. But yeah, more often than not, we are on the set well prepared. We do something called a tech recce, right? So technical recce's. So tech recce's are specifically for this purpose, where director, the cinematographers, the other heads of departments, other technicians, all huddle before the shoot and go to the location and plan out exactly what we're going to do and how. So everybody's on the same page and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's pretty much the way it works.
Thank you. I mean, I know there's lots that can be done post-production too, but it's good to kind of understand the process of how you'll approach your work. And that was my reason for the question. So Thanks, Vikas. Miriam, I know you've been involved in television a lot and also in film a lot. What would you think were your biggest highlights working in television, which is a different medium, different audience, and film, which is a different process, different medium, different audience? Can you give us one highlight for both of them?
Well, television, when I did television, I did factual TV. I was a current affairs and documentaries person. And so in that world, I spent my life meeting real people. So from, Mikhail Gorbachev to the Rolling Stones to Second World War, Victoria Cross winners to, Margaret Thatcher. So that was one kind of world, and it required a certain kind of mentality. The feature film world is totally different. There it is about the glamour and the scale and the size and movie stars and musicians and clothes and, so two very different things. And sort of my curious heart loved both. Yeah, I was very lucky.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that thought. And let me close with asking Karan a question. And this is, Karan, you like documenting things, writing about stuff, capturing them on film and speaking about that. Well, I'm sure there is a process, the script associated with documentary filmmaking and, commercial filmmaking. Do you want to share something that you have probably approached it in different ways, maybe? Or what you understand, the definition.
Documentary, the script is more a guideline. You don't really have as fixed a script as you would in Think Fiction. In Think Fiction, there is one school of filmmaking that actually has a short breakdown ready. That, documentary, of course, is a lot more free flowing. But I think the research is very important when you kind of it's important in fiction as well, but even more so in the world of non-fiction. And more important than that is to be able to sift it and to get a take on what you're actually going to say, because then it affects your shooting. You would shoot in a particular manner once you have a take. Otherwise, a documentary, the danger of it is that it can get into just general coverage. Then you struggle at the edit to make some sort of form out of what you've shot. I think it's important to sift your research material, to get a focus on what you're trying to say, because beyond that, as I said, it's not as rigid as a thing fiction script. So once you've kind of got that, you're in you're in a good space when you're shooting a documentary. And I think I've kind of managed that somewhere with both An American in Madras and the film I'm making, because today with digital, documentary filmmakers tend to have 100 and 200 hours of footage. I've got precisely 25 hours in one film, and I have about 40 in this film. Yeah. That focus, I think, as to what you're trying to say. Yeah. You need to have that even in a documentary. But of course, you be open to see what unfolds in front of you. Like I said, in documentaries, they say God is the director.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you very much, Vikas and Miriam as well. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and very happy that you all came on OL Nation and shared your work, your experience following having left school. With that, let me call Rohan on, and we can close the session out.
Thanks a lot. Really engaging. And I don't watch too many movies, but I definitely am always interested in the creative side of it and the art of putting things together. So I have a question about the projection of soft power culturally. I remember we talked about the United States concept of the MTV and the projection of concepts from there. I was reading an article on the Korean K-pop phenomenon about size Gangnam Style and how it's, gone all over the world. Arcade, big fan. So where are we going? As it's hard to say, we are a large country with various blocks, South, North, Hollywood, Bollywood, and whatnot. But where are we? We are definitely evolving on a qualitative basis. It's pretty obvious. But where are we going? Where do you see us going and evolving in terms of soft power and the projection of our culture from a qualitative point of view?
Well, film culture is one thing. I think the wonderful thing about India, though, is that our culture runs wide and deep in terms of all our classical arts, which are some things that not many other countries have. Some do, a lot of others don't. But, we're also, like most things, non-Eurocentric. We're only beginning to get our moment in the sun now. For the best part of the last 2 or 3 centuries, it's been Europe, and then in the last century or so, it's been America. Yeah. But I think with the internet, all those places that have been in the shadows are sort of coming out into the light now. So our classical arts are beautiful, important, and I think they speak for themselves. Our film art, I think, has gotten a lot better. Commercial film may not be to everybody's taste globally, but our independent film sector, the small films that travel to all the festivals around the world, which a lot of Indians don't get to see, but a lot of foreigners get to see because they're interested in that kind of cinema. They're certainly moving India out into the sun. So I'm very positive about that.
Vikas or Karan?
Karan is a good guy too.
No, I think
Karan's a guy? Okay.
I think Miriam has pretty much explained it, I think, rather well. I think cinema in India especially has been a mixture. And in fact, the world over, cinema does take from other art forms. And like she mentioned, in India, it's actually, there's a lot more integration. In fact, the world of music and song and dance is what also made us think unique. And perhaps as different parts of the internet now start getting their glory, somewhere music and dance is still very integral in India. And I think that is something that our films still kind of dictate. Our music videos, when they came, they looked like, unlike the West where the music videos were totally different, we had a film hangover in our music videos. The TikTok videos that are made, etc., they all go back to film. So I think somewhere our film culture is very, very strong. I think the fact that we're the largest institute of the imaginary, the largest maker of films in the world, and I don't see that dying because I think films are a part of everyone's life in India.
Vikas?
Well, change is afoot, I think, and it's kind of sweeping through, and it seems to be coming at a fairly decent clip. So my sense is that digital is stepping in, not just stepping in, but it's taking over. So everything is slowly going to slide towards digital. Today, if you enter an aircraft for a flight, or during the flight, walk down the aisle, what do you see? You see practically every passenger has his mobile phone or pad or laptop out, and they're watching content on it. Practically everybody on the flight would be doing that. So, which simply says, I think that this personal viewing on your personal device is a growing trend. That's probably the way, cinema is going to head. Content is going to finally be delivered to the consumer, and therefore cinema needs to kind of adapt itself to that. And that simply means that putting out your 400 chariots and 600 battleships may not have the kind of impact that it would have in a theater or on a digital
on a single device.
So you might want to actually do stories which are far more intimate, far more cerebral, and have things to say rather than things to show. That I feel is the way that things will head finally. But in India, we are really coming up to speed, and it's just the probably last decade or so of the old style filmmaking that we're going to be seeing. We're going to be switching to a whole new world.
In fact, I just want to add that one thing Vic said about indie cinema, that I think both the documentary filmmakers and the indie films, as Miriam also mentioned, that I think is getting a big lift in the Indian film industry today, and they are making a major mark at film festivals all over.
Thank you. Thanks.
I also think general viewer has been a little more is a little more wiser, smarter, expecting more from the visual screen.
Discerning.
So, discerning. So all of this is coming to a nice crescendo.
So I think we've run out of time, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you, Vikas, Miriam, Karan, of course, our host Kalpana, and thank you very much for this superbly engaging session. One of the things we are trying to do on OL Nation is to showcase the diverse range of stuff that our folks have done, once they've left school. So thank you so much. And for everyone else out there, don't forget, see you at Founders 5th and 6th of September. Have a good evening or good day, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.